I'm 68 years old now, and for 42 years I kept the most impossible secret you can imagine. In the basement of my house in the Colorado mountains, hidden from the entire world, lived a creature that science swore didn't exist. His name was Marcus, at least that's what I called him, and he was a Bigfoot. I found him in 1982, dying frozen in a blizzard, and I made a choice that day that completely transformed my life. This is the story of how an ordinary man became the protector of something extraordinary, and why I finally decided it was time to tell the truth. But before we start, if you like stories that challenge everything we think we know about the world, leave your like on this video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications, because every week I bring incredible stories like this one. And comment down below, would you believe it if you found a Bigfoot? Now let's get to the story. November 1982. Winter had arrived early in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, where I'd lived since I was 20. I inherited the property from my grandfather, 35 acres of dense forest, with an old house and a huge basement that he used as a warehouse. It was perfect for someone like me, who valued privacy above all else. My nearest neighbor was almost 5 kilometers away. My name is Thomas Reed, and back then I was 26 years old, working as a forest ranger. I knew those mountains like the back of my hand. I spent my days patrolling trails, guiding tourists, keeping order in the wild vastness. It was a simple life, solitary, but it was exactly what I wanted. On November 19th, 1982, a massive snowstorm hit the region. Winds over 100 kilometers per hour, zero visibility, temperatures reaching -25 degrees. Authorities ordered everyone to stay home, but as a forest ranger, I had responsibilities. I needed to check if there were no hikers trapped on the trails. I equipped my Jeep with tire chains, grabbed my emergency kit, and went out into the storm. The snow was falling so hard I could barely see the hood of the vehicle. I followed the main routes, checking shelters and known camping spots. Nothing. Apparently everyone had been sensible enough to stay home. I was about to turn back when I heard something, a low, guttural sound that somehow cut through the howling wind. It wasn't a bear. I knew the sound of bears. It wasn't an elk or a wolf. It was something different, something that carried pain. I followed the sound for almost 800 meters, sinking into the snow up to my knees with every step. Then I saw it. A massive form, collapsed against a pine tree, half buried in snow. My first thought was that it was an injured bear, but when I got closer, wielding my flashlight, I realized it wasn't. It was enormous, easily 2.5 meters tall, even lying down, covered in reddish-brown fur, now frozen and covered with ice. The arms were too long, the shoulders too broad, and the face, my God, the face was almost human, but not exactly. Prominent eyebrows, flattened nose, eyes that watched me with intelligence and fear. A Bigfoot, a real Bigfoot, dying of hypothermia right in front of me. All the stories I'd heard, all the legends, all the reports we dismissed as frauds, everything came flooding back in that moment, but there was no time to process. The creature was shaking violently, lips bluish, breathing shallow. If I didn't do something, it would die right there. "Hey, can you hear me?" I spoke, not knowing if he understood. "I need to get you out of here. You'll die if you stay in the cold." His eyes focused on me. There was fear there, but also something more. Recognition, understanding. And then, faintly, he nodded. A deliberate, unmistakable movement. "Holy God," I murmured. "You understand." There was no way to take him in the Jeep. He was too big. So I did the only thing I could think of. I covered him with emergency thermal blankets, lit chemical heating flares, and placed them around him to raise the temperature. Then I ran back to the Jeep and brought everything I had. More blankets, hot water from my thermos, protein bars. "You need to eat," I said, offering the bars. "You need energy to warm up." He took the bars with enormous hands, shaking so much he could barely open the packages. I opened them for him. He ate slowly, each movement requiring immense effort. I spent the next 3 hours there with him, in the storm, feeding the flare fires, adjusting the blankets, trying to keep him alive. Finally, his temperature stabilized, the shaking decreased. He looked at me again, and this time I saw gratitude. "My house isn't far. I said. "It has a large basement, heated. You can recover there. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" He studied my face for a long moment. Then, with visible effort, he nodded again. It took us almost 5 hours to reach my property. He could barely walk, leaning on me with all his weight, probably around 300 kilos. Each step was agony. But we finally arrived. The basement had a side entrance, which meant we didn't need to go through the house. I opened the door and helped him down the steps. Inside, there was enough space, about 80 square meters, with a high ceiling that my grandfather had built to store large equipment. I arranged an area with old mattresses, blankets, and pillows. Marcus, I'm going to call you Marcus, lay down with a deep sigh. His eyes closed almost immediately. "I'll get food and more blankets," I promised. "Rest." I spent that entire night taking care of him. I brought all the meat I had in the freezer, fruits, vegetables, water. I monitored his temperature, checked for frostbite wounds. There weren't any. Whatever he was incredibly resistant. By dawn, when the storm finally passed, Marcus was sleeping deeply. His breathing was stable, color had returned to his face. He would survive. I sat beside him, watching that impossible creature, and realized what I'd done. I saved a Bigfoot, and now he was in my basement. What the hell would I do next? In the following days, Marcus recovered quickly. By the 3rd day, he was sitting up, looking around with curiosity. By the 5th, he was walking, exploring every corner of the basement, and we started to communicate, not with words. His vocal anatomy didn't allow human speech, but with gestures, expressions, sounds. He learned quickly that nodding meant yes, and shaking meant no. He learned to point at things he wanted or needed. I brought paper and pens, and he was fascinated. He couldn't write, but he drew. Simple shapes at first, then more complex images. Trees, mountains, others like him. "Do you have family?" I asked, pointing to the drawings of other creatures. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he drew something that broke my heart. 3 large figures, one small. Then he crossed out the 3 large ones with an X. "You lost your family," I whispered. "I'm sorry, Marcus." He placed one enormous hand on my shoulder, a gesture of gratitude, of connection. In that moment I realized I wasn't alone anymore, and neither was he. December arrived, and with it came a problem I hadn't anticipated. The Forest Service began a search operation in the area. Reports of strange footprints in the snow, unusual sounds. Someone had noticed something during the storm. Federal agents appeared at my door on December 8th. 2 men in suits, Department of the Interior badges. "Mr. Reed," said the taller one, "I'm Agent Morrison. We're investigating reports of unusual activity in the area. As a forest ranger, have you seen anything unusual recently?" "Define unusual," I responded, keeping my face neutral. "Large footprints, strange sounds, sightings of unidentified animals." Down below, in the basement, Marcus was just 10 meters away. I had instructed him that morning, using gestures, to stay absolutely quiet if he heard unfamiliar voices. He understood. With that storm, honestly, I spent most of the time indoors. I lied, but I can keep watch. If I see anything, I'll report immediately. Morrison studied me with sharp eyes. "Do that, Mr. Reed. And if you're hiding relevant information, that would be obstruction of a federal investigation." "I understand perfectly, Agent." They left, but I knew they'd be back, and I was right. During the next weeks, agents appeared 3 more times, always with questions, always investigating. They set up monitoring equipment in the forest, cameras, motion sensors. Marcus couldn't go out. Even at night, it was too risky. So the basement became his permanent world. I worked to make it comfortable. I installed more lighting, brought an old TV with a VCR, books with lots of illustrations. He loved television, especially nature documentaries. He'd sit, completely absorbed, watching animals in their natural habitats. Sometimes he'd make low, soft sounds. Longing, I realized. He missed his world. "I'm sorry you're stuck here," I said one night, sitting beside him as we watched a program about bears. "But if they find you, I don't know what they'd do. They'd probably take you away, study you like a lab specimen." Marcus looked at me with those intelligent eyes. Then he pointed at me, at himself, and placed his hand over his heart. "Family, protection, gratitude." "Yes," I whispered, "we're family now, and I'll protect you. no matter what. The 80s moved forward. Reagan was in the presidency. The Cold War dominated the news, and in my basement, I kept the world's biggest secret. Marcus adapted to confined life in surprising ways. He had routines. He woke at nightfall, as if still following his nocturnal instinct. He did exercises, complex stretches that seemed like some kind of ancestral practice. He ate at 8 p.m. sharp, always waiting politely for me to bring his meal. His diet was varied. Raw or rare meat, fruits in large quantities, vegetables, nuts. I spent almost half my salary on food, but it was worth every penny. I developed an elaborate story about preparing for survivalism to explain the excessive purchases. Communication between us evolved. In 1985, I had an idea. I made cards with simple images, objects, emotions, action. Marcus learned quickly to point at them to express needs or thoughts. In a few months, we had a vocabulary of over 200 concepts. "You're smarter than most people I know," I told him one night. "If the world knew what you really are, it would change everything we think about evolution, consciousness, our place in the world." Marcus picked 3 cards. Fear, humans, capture. "I know, friend. That's why you stay here. That's why we keep the secret." But keeping the secret got harder every year. In 1987, an investigative journalist started asking questions in town. Rumors about creatures in the mountains, sightings, federal interest. He knocked on my door. "Mr. Reed, there's something strange happening in these mountains. Federal monitoring, secret investigations. As a forest ranger, you must know something." "I've heard the rumors," I replied carefully. "But personally, I've never seen anything that couldn't be explained as normal wildlife. Bears can look very large in the fog. Elk make strange sounds. People's imagination fills in the rest." He wasn't convinced, but he also had no proof. His article came out a few weeks later, speculative and easily dismissed, but it was a warning. Interest was growing. That same year, I made an important modification to the property. I hired a construction company to expand my basement, actually. I was creating a secondary area, connected by a hidden door where Marcus could hide if someone inspected the main part. The construction worker looked at the plans with skepticism. "That's a lot of storage space, Mr. Reed." "I'm a collector," I lied. "Vintage equipment, antique furniture. I need the space." Construction took 3 months. During that time, Marcus had to stay absolutely silent in the most remote area of the original basement. His patience was extraordinary. He never complained, never made noise that could reveal his presence. When it was ready, Marcus effectively had 2 rooms. One I could show if necessary, another where he actually lived. The door between them was disguised as a bookshelf. No one would ever know. The 90s brought new technologies and new fears. The internet was beginning, cell phones becoming common. The world was getting smaller, more connected, harder to keep secrets. In 1992, I bought a computer. Marcus was fascinated. I showed him how it worked, and to my surprise, he picked it up quickly. Within weeks, he was navigating by himself, using the mouse to click on images, explore simple programs. I installed children's educational games, puzzle programs. Marcus mastered them in days. His intellect was impressive. I started wondering if, given the right tools, he could learn to read, write, maybe even communicate through text. I spent 1993 teaching Marcus the alphabet. It was slow, but he was dedicated. Each letter, each sound. By 1994, he recognized written words. By 1995, he was forming simple sentences by typing on the computer. The first complete sentence he typed was, "Thomas, good friend." I cried when I saw that on the screen. 41 years old, living alone in the mountains. And it was 3 words typed by a Bigfoot that finally made me feel truly connected to another being. "Marcus, also good friend," I typed back. "Family, family," he repeated on the screen. Then he added, "Forever." "Forever," I agreed. But forever was about to be tested. In 1996, I had a heart attack. I was working in the yard when the pain hit my chest like lightning. I managed to stumble inside to the house, call emergency, but then I passed out. I woke up in the hospital 2 days later. My neighbor Trevor had found me and called additional help. The doctor said I was lucky, the attack was moderate, but I needed lifestyle changes, less stress, better diet, exercise. But all I could think about was Marcus. Alone in the basement, without food, without water, not knowing if I'd return. I managed to get out of the hospital on the third day against medical advice. I drove home with my heart still weak, but my mind determined. "Marcus!" I called, descending the basement stairs as fast as my body allowed. He was sitting in the corner, clearly hungry, dehydrated, but alive. When he saw me, his eyes filled with something I can only describe as desperate relief. I ran to him, and for the first time in 14 years, Marcus hugged me, gently, carefully, conscious of his strength, but firmly. He was trembling. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm sorry, friend. I had a health problem, but I'm okay now. I'll bring you food and water right now." I brought everything he needed, watched him eat and drink with silent gratitude. Then he typed on the computer. "Thought you dead. Thought me alone again. I'll never leave you alone, I promised." But it made me think. I was aging. I was 54 years old. What if something worse happened? What if I died? What would happen to Marcus? I needed a contingency plan. I started writing everything in detailed journals. Marcus's care, his diet, his needs, his history, how to communicate with him. I left instructions that if something happened to me, these journals should go to my nephew, Daniel Reed, who lived in Seattle. Daniel was 28. A scientist, open-minded. If anyone could understand and continue protecting Marcus, it would be him. In 1998, I decided it was time. I invited Daniel for a visit. "Uncle Thomas, it's good to see you," he said, hugging me when he arrived. "You look well. I heard about the heart attack. It scared everyone." "I'm fine, but there's something I need to show you. Something that will completely change your understanding of the world." I took him to the basement. Marcus was waiting, as we'd agreed. When Daniel saw him, he literally fell backward, hitting the wall. Is this real?" he stammered. "This can't be real." "Daniel," I said calmly, "this is Marcus. He's been living here since 1982. He's intelligent, kind, and needs protection. If something happens to me, I need you to promise to take care of him." Daniel couldn't take his eyes off Marcus. Marcus politely waved, a simple human gesture that made everything even more surreal. He waved at me. He understands much more than that. "Come, I'll show you." I spent the next hours showing Daniel everything. The card communication, Marcus's ability to use the computer, his intelligence, his history. Daniel asked hundreds of questions, his scientific mind processing everything. Finally, he sat down heavily. "Uncle Thomas, do you understand what this means? Biologically, anthropologically, this rewrites everything. I know, and that's exactly why the world can never know, not while Marcus is alive. They turn him into an experiment. He deserves more than that." Daniel looked at Marcus, who was watching the exchange calmly. Then he nodded. "I promise, if something happens to you, I'll take care of him. I'll protect his secret." "Thank you, Daniel. But, Uncle Thomas?" Someday after Daniel hesitated. "After Marcus is gone, after he can't be hurt, his story should be told. The world deserves to know we're not alone. That consciousness comes in many forms." "Maybe," I agreed. "Maybe then." The 2000s arrived with new surveillance paranoia, security cameras becoming cheap and ubiquitous, Google Earth launch, drones starting to appear. Each technological advance was a new potential threat to Marcus's privacy. I installed heavier blinds, planted trees strategically to block aerial views, invested in signal-blocking technology to avoid detection of computer frequencies. The house became a fortress of secrecy. Marcus, now what I estimated to be close to 60 years old, was slowing down. The hair around his face was turning grey. His movements, once agile, were getting stiffer. He developed arthritis in his knees. I brought medications, heaters, orthopedic cushions. I adapted his environment for maximum comfort, and I spent more time simply sitting with him, two beings aging together, sharing comfortable silence. In 2008, we completed 26 years together, a quarter century of secret friendship. I made a small cake, something simple with honey and fruits he loved. Marcus pointed at the cake, then at me, and typed, "Thank you for life, thank you for care, thank you for not alone. You're welcome, friend. You saved my life as much as I saved yours." And it was true. Without Marcus, I would have lived and died alone in these mountains, a solitary forest ranger with no real connection to anyone. Marcus gave me purpose, family, a reason to continue every day. But age was catching up to us. In 2010, I retired from the Forest Service at 68. My body couldn't handle the work anymore. Daniel visited more frequently now, helping with heavy tasks, bringing supplies. In 2015, Marcus became gravely ill, a respiratory infection that didn't respond to normal antibiotics. His temperature spiked. He could barely breathe. Daniel brought a veterinarian friend, Dr. Sarah Kim, under the pretext of treating an exotic primate we were keeping illegally. When she saw Marcus, she froze. "My God," she whispered, "this isn't possible." "It's possible, and he's dying," Daniel said firmly. "You can help or not, but if you can't, I need you to leave and never tell anyone what you saw." Sarah, to her credit, recovered her composure quickly. She treated Marcus for 2 weeks. The fever subsided, breathing improved, and she kept the secret. "He's remarkable," she told me before leaving, "and you two, Thomas and Daniel, have created something extraordinary here, a bridge between species. I'll be proud to protect it. One more person in the circle of trust, one more guardian of the world's biggest secret." In 2020, the world stopped with the pandemic. Lockdowns, masks, social distancing. For most, it was an unprecedented period of isolation. For Marcus and me, it was just Tuesday. We'd been in lockdown for 38 years, but the pandemic brought a benefit. With fewer people going out, less oversight, we were freer than ever. I opened the basement door at night, and Marcus could go out to the walled yard, feel the fresh air, look at the stars. The first time he stood under the open sky in almost 4 decades, he cried, silent tears running down his furry face as he looked at the moon. "I'm sorry it took so long," I whispered. He shook his head and typed later, "You gave life, you gave safety, you gave love, nothing to apologize for." But there was something to apologize for, because in January 2024, everything changed. I was 82 years old. Marcus was over 80, we estimated. We both knew time was running out. My hands trembled with early Parkinson's. His breathing was labored even at rest. One January night, as we sat together watching nature documentaries as we'd done 1,000 times before, Marcus typed something unexpected. "Want world know. After me die. Tell story. I existed." I looked at him with surprise. "But we always wanted to protect you, keep you safe from exposure." "I lived in secret," he typed slowly. "That was necessary. But when I die, want to mean something, want humans know we exist. We think, we feel, maybe help my species still living hidden. Are you sure?" "Sure, promise." "I promise, Marcus. When you're gone, we'll tell your story. The world will know." He placed his enormous hand on mine. "Thank you, Thomas. You best human I met. Only human I met, but best." I cried that night, knowing we were approaching the end, knowing I'd soon be alone again. Marcus died peacefully on March 15th, 2024. He simply didn't wake up from his sleep. His heart, strong for so many decades, finally stopped. Daniel and Sarah were there. We cried together. Then, as agreed, we began the process. Sarah performed a complete autopsy, documenting everything. Daniel collected DNA samples, sending them to various laboratories under false identities. I organized 42 years of journals, photos, videos of Marcus using the computer, communicating, showing intelligence. On April 20th, 2024, we released everything simultaneously. We posted on scientific platforms, sent to major media outlets, published on open-source sites where it couldn't be suppressed. The reaction was instant and overwhelming. My property was surrounded within hours. News reports, scientists, federal agents, curious onlookers, helicopters flying overhead, cameras everywhere. Federal agents arrived first, led by Agent Morrison, now much older but still recognizable. "Mr. Reed," he said, his voice full of something between admiration and anger. "You've been hiding him all this time, since that first investigation in 1982. Since then, I confirmed. 42 years. Why? Why not tell us? We could have protected him." I shook my head. You would have locked him up, studied, turned into government property. Marcus deserved more. He deserved dignity. Morrison looked at Marcus's preserved body, now being examined by a complete scientific team. Maybe you're right. Maybe he did deserve that. The world exploded in the following months. Furious debates about where Marcus's remains should go. Some wanted the Smithsonian, others wanted traditional burial. Animal rights groups demanded legal recognition of the species. DNA analysis confirmed what we knew. Marcus was a previously unclassified hominid species, genetically positioned between great apes and archaic humans. The evidence was incontestable. In June 2024, the federal government officially classified Marcus's species as critically endangered, possibly extinct, and established enormous protection areas in various national forests where historical reports had been most frequent. They offered me total immunity in exchange for cooperation. I accepted, not for me, but to honor Marcus's memory. His remains were finally cremated in August 2024, as I insisted. I scattered the ashes on the mountain where I found him in 1982, closing the circle. Marcus was more than a scientific discovery, I told the cameras present. He was a person. He thought, felt, loved. He had a sense of humor. He appreciated beauty. He valued friendship. He was my family. I scattered the final ashes. For 42 years, you lived hidden because the world wasn't ready for you. I hope that now maybe things change. For any of your species still out there, I hope they find a kinder world. Today, at 68 years old, I still live on this property. The basement where Marcus lived is now a private memorial, not open to the public, but preserved exactly as it was. I receive letters from around the world, from people who say Marcus's story changed how they see other species, from conservationists inspired to protect habitats, from scientists who dedicated their careers to looking for others like him, and sometimes, in the quiet of the mountain nights, I think I hear something in the trees, a deep, distant sound, and I wonder if maybe, just maybe, Marcus wasn't the last. His 42 years with me taught me that consciousness isn't the exclusive property of humans, that family can take forms we never expect, and that the greatest acts of love sometimes mean keeping secrets, not out of shame, but for protection. Marcus existed, he mattered, and although he lived his life hidden from the world, his death ensured that his species would never be completely forgotten again. That was his gift to me, allowing me to tell his story, and this is my gift to him, ensuring the world finally knows the truth, that somewhere in the depths of the wild forests, magic still exists, and it deserves our respect, our protection, and our wonder. And that's it, folks. A story of impossible friendship, of sacrifice, of 42 years protecting something the world said didn't exist. If you liked it, leave that like, subscribe to the channel, and comment what you would do if you found a creature like this. See you in the next story.